The Electoral Commission says it's ready to conduct voter registration tomorrow and on Sunday ahead of the municipal polls on the 1st of November. This follows a ruling by the Constitutional Court 2 weeks ago dismissing the IEC's failed bid to have the elections postponed to February next year. The IEC's Chief Electoral Officer, Mamabolo, joins us now to talk more on this. And Mamabolo, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time this evening. Is it all systems go?
Well, we've done everything humanly possible to prepare the country for what we expect to be an excellent registration service to people. All staff trained, all logistics already at the voting stations, and we should have an excellent service tomorrow.
Now, let's talk then about, what is required from someone who is wondering if they should go or not go for voter registration. What would you say to them today they need to know?
Well, let's start at the unconventional point. Firstly, that it would be safe to visit voting stations. Our staff will be kitted out in the requisite personal protection equipment. There'll be protocols that have been instituted at stations, i.e., social distancing, sanitizing upon entry and departure at the voting stations. And it will therefore be generally safe to visit voting stations. In order to register, you need an identity document, which may be in the form of a smart ID card, a green barcoded ID or ID book, or a temporary identification certificate. Of course, we have to capture your address, but we do not necessarily need proof of residence for purposes of enlisting on the voters' roll.
So when we talk then about, let's look at people that have registered before who are saying, no, my name will be appearing, so I don't need to go and check. And this is also somebody who's moved addresses to another spot. What should they do?
Well, if you have moved house since the last election, it's imperative that you re-register and visit your voting station, re-register at the voting station in the ward in which you live. This election is slightly different from a national and provincial election in that you vote at the voting station in the ward in which you live. You will not be allowed to vote anywhere else, as is the case in national and provincial election. So the ward discipline in this election is paramount, because you can only vote for a ward councillor for the ward in which you live. So re-registering in the correct ward, quite imperative in this election. However, if you've registered before and you have not moved house, there are a number of ways in which you can confirm your registration. Firstly, you can go to the station. You can check your registration details on the website or on our web. You can phone our call center at 0800 11 8000. I repeat, 0800 11 8000. But you can also SMS your ID number to number 32810. So SMS your ID number to 32810. You'll get almost an instantaneous response to confirm your registration.
And then let's talk about the total number of voting stations, in fact, registration stations that will be operational. What time do they open? What time do they close?
We are operating 23,151 registration stations, all of which are expected to open at 8 in the morning and so remain until 5 p.m. And that will be the case on both days.
And let's then look at the system. I know that you've mentioned COVID-19 protocols that will be observed during this time, but talk to us then about the system. Did you have to make some adjustments to the system in order to accommodate the pandemic that we're finding ourselves in?
Oh, no, certainly. We've introduced electronic registration, a first for our country, at the beginning, in the middle of July. And those that have access to smart devices and those have access to bandwidth and so on, can register online at their pleasure, really at their own time, in their own homes, at any time of the day and so on. And that will remain open until Monday midnight, when the election will be legally proclaimed by the minister. So there is also that flexibility that is afforded voters.
And when we then look at the machine that you're now using, it's different from the zip machine that you used before. Talk to us about that.
Indeed, we also have procured 40,000 voter management devices, which will be used on mass scale tomorrow and Sunday. It's a game changer in the sense that a majority of them will be operating online. As a result, we'll be able to confirm citizenship of applicants almost instantaneously, and will also be in a position to confirm addresses in relation to the ward boundary. As this is also an imperative, like I indicated before, that in a local government election, the discipline around the ward becomes important. So this machine will be used for registration, but it will also be used on election day for a different purpose, which is serving as a live voters roll. You'll be crossed off a live voters roll on election day, and if you try to present yourself at another station having voted at the one, an indication will be given. So it will also strengthen our controls around the integrity of the voting process.
It sounds to me like most of, if not all, is done online. What happens then to those areas in South Africa that are not so strong when it comes to internet connection?
Indeed, a very fair question. The machine itself is capable of operating online as well as offline. So in areas where there is no bandwidth and network, we'll be able to operate that machine offline. We'll continue capturing, store the data locally on the machine. It has enough storage capacity to allow for that. And as soon as it gets to the local office of the IC, it will automatically be uploaded, and those transactions will be verified. So take it, for instance, even here in Centurion, where we are, if for some reason we lose connectivity, the process continues. There is no crisis. We capture, and at a point where a network returns, we are able to then connect and upload the data.
Have you made any special provision, especially for maybe the elderly that would be visiting voting stations? Will we see what you normally do on voting day where they skip the queue? Talk to us about the logistics then.
Yes, certainly. Elder persons who are infirm and so on, should there be queues, which we really do not expect, they'll be serviced first, like we do on election day. That is out of respect for those who are of advanced age. And we must service them as we should, earlier than the rest of us who are still youthful.
Ndata Mamabolo, I can't help but ask you this. I know that the IEC has spoken about writing to the president about having the day, November 1st, declared a public holiday. We've also heard some parties as well calling for this, some unions saying that this needs to happen. How far is that process, or are we still waiting for the date of proclamation to then know if this will be a holiday?
The plans are that the minister will proclaim the election date on Monday the 20th, and separate to that process, communication has been directed to the Minister of Home Affairs, who will then facilitate a request to the President to declare election date a public holiday. That matter, I'm sure, is receiving due consideration, and at the point where the President makes that decision, the presidency will inform the country.
All right, Dada Mamabolo, thank you so much for your time this evening. Let's remind you then of that number that is on your screen right now, 0800 11 8000, and you can also SMS 32810, and that is the SMS there that you can then be able to send. These are the numbers on your screen right now in order to check the status of your registration, as the IEC says that it's all systems go. All of its registration stations will be open in order to assist those who need to come through for this particular voter registration weekend, and also then saying that they've put measures in place to ensure that all COVID-19 protocols have been observed, and just to ensure that everything is done according to the book.